Everyone, it's Shaya here. How are you all? I can see that it's a little bit early, but there's quite a lot of you actually already online there. So I thought I'd just get started so everyone can say hello, and I can see that started already. We won't get started just yet, but while you're here, perhaps, just whilst you're saying hello, let us know where you're from. Be really good to see who exactly is here. I know that from looking at the guests list, we've had over 100 people register for this webinar, so it's obviously really popular. We've got all sorts of people from different areas. We've got lawyers, we've got clients, we've got different service providers working with people like family law, in the family law space. So let us know where you're from. That would be really good to see. And whilst you're also here, we'll get started in a minute. Whilst you're nice and early, just have a look down there. Hi, Sue. Oh, Sue Blackall, great to see you. Hopefully you'll be able to answer some of our questions, Sue, about the Children's Contact Service. Check out the polls there, and I can see some of you have started filling them out already. I just want to get a feel for who you are, where you're from. It'll help me kind of tailor the questions, but I also want this to be a really open webinar in terms of information exchange. And I think having that chat box there in addition to the polls really going to help in that respect. So please feel free to go for gold in terms of comments. And I'm just looking now. So we've got someone from the Zara Foundation. That's awesome. Alicia, FLP. FDR practitioner in Whyalla, South Australia. We've got a lawyer at Westside, Family Relationship Service, Port Augusta, Family Relationship Centre, Laura from Williams Lawyers. Hi, Laura. Good to have you. So I'm just looking at the polls and just scroll down and answer them whilst we're waiting for everyone else to join us. We've got heaps of people online already. What best describes you? So just look at the polls there. Yeah, where you're from. So we've got quite a few from South Australia. And the other question I've asked there in the poll is, has your work situation changed at the moment? So are you currently working from home perhaps, and you didn't previously? So I'm just keen to look at those stats now as you go through and fill them out. Who else we got here? Yeah, working from home now. Cool. All right. Well, the time is about 1 minute past, so I'll get started. Thanks again for joining us, and those that have just jumped on. We've had quite a few new ones just jump on now. Head to the chat box, give us a hello, let us know where you're from. So we want this to be quite interactive and exchange of information, okay? I have Ilham Rubber, who's our firm manager. She's co-hosting this webinar. So if there's any technical difficulties, which some of you know I've been prone to in the past, she will help, and you can ask her there in the chat box. And she'll also answer any questions that you've got. Perhaps while I'm talking, she might have the answer, and she might give you a link like to a website, for example, or something like that. Okay, so this is not a drill. Let me pull up my bio very quickly about me. So I'm the principal solicitor at the Family Law Project. We've been in business now for 7 years. I've been working as a family lawyer for 17 years, long time. I'm an independent children's lawyer. We do lots of legal aid work. We do lots of fixed fee work. And you can head to our website if you'd like to see more. But I just wanted to give you that quick overview. The other thing, caveat, lawyers love caveats. I'm not a medical practitioner. So we're talking about coronavirus. We're talking about a lot of medical issues today and how that's affecting society. Clearly, I'm not a medical practitioner, okay? So let's keep it in context. Any information I'm giving you is not specific legal advice as well. And I'm just having a look. So we've got quite a few from the Family Relationship Centre. Claire, Eleanor, West Community Legal Centre in Western Australia. That's awesome. Thank you for tuning in. Rasa and Berry. Trisha's always worked at home in Sydney. Lucky you, Trish, avoiding that horrible Sydney commute. I don't miss that at all. We've got Rowena, who's a volunteer at the Women's Info Service. Wow, okay, there's heaps of different people. Megan North Lawyers in New South Wales. Hi, Jenna. I don't think we've met. I'd like to chat to you. Okay, great. Let me get to it. So, this is not a drill. I had this idea for this webinar on Saturday, and I don't know about you guys, but Friday of last week, and today's only Thursday, but believe it or not, Friday of last week, it felt as though there was some real momentum and with everything going on in society, and it felt as though, for me at least, Friday of last week was quite heavy. It was quite difficult. I found it personally a little bit difficult, and I started thinking about how is this going to affect me as a small business owner, and how is this going to affect my clients and service providers who are assisting family law clients? What's going to be the roll-on effect through the court system and so on? What this is a calm chat. Like I said, it's interactive, and I'm so happy everyone's chatting away there. It's a calm conversation, but I feel it's a conversation that needs to happen. It's not fear-mongering. I've already been accused of that. I get a lot of negative comments, particularly on social media. That's fine, but that's not what this is about. That's not my intention. And excuse me while I just have a cup of tea. So this was Saturday when I had this idea for the webinar. It seemed pertinent. There's been so many changes since that time. So on Sunday, we had our Prime Minister saying that we need to handshake like this now. There's no more handshaking. So I put out a memo to my staff over the weekend saying, look, this might seem a bit over the top, guys, but from now on, we won't be shaking our clients' hands. How are we going to deal with that? Then the Prime Minister came out after I'd put that memo out and said, look, no handshaking. So that made it a bit easier in terms of us communicating that to the client, because we didn't want to seem as over the top, but likewise, I want to protect my staff. I want to protect my clients. On Sunday, Sunday just gone, we saw the District Court in Victoria make an announcement that jury trials for criminal matters for Supreme and District Court in Victoria would not be sitting, so no new jury trials. On Monday of this week, we saw South Australia come out and say something similar in terms of at that point, I think they paused for one day while they took a bit more time to consider, but in essence, no new jury trials in South Australia. In Sydney, earlier this week, we saw the registry, two things. I saw a photograph and I used to attend the Sydney registry regularly, and I can tell you there was never long lineups sort of out to Castlereagh Street. And there was huge lineups outside the Sydney registry. There was practitioners with the 1.5 metres apart. It's like nothing you've ever seen before. We also saw that registry closed for one day because a practitioner last week subsequently confirmed that they'd been diagnosed with coronavirus. So court shut down for a day. What else have we seen? Tuesday, Western Australia, which is where I am today, we saw the family law courts here in WA say that all hearings would be by telephone. That was pretty big. On Wednesday, yesterday, seems like days ago. Honestly, this information is changing and it's updating constantly. One of the duty lawyers said to me this morning it's being updated in her mind hourly. So yesterday we saw in South Australia an announcement put out by the Family Court of SA, and all the judicial officers have signed it around phone hearings only and so on. And I'll talk a little bit in a little bit more detail about that later. We also saw yesterday some of our clients who have upcoming meetings at the Family Court with family consultants for what's called a Section 11F have been told that will now be by telephone. So this initial webinar was before all this transpired. My idea for this webinar was before all this transpired, and the type of things I anticipated talking about was reassuring my clients and reassuring my staff around how we're going to attend court and how we're going to feel safe doing that. And I was going to get information and suggestions from clients and service providers, and a bit of input around what other people think as well. But we've seen such big changes since that time. So the slides have changed, okay? So in terms of what we're going to cover, and I'll just make this bigger for you. And I can see, oh, hi, Emma from Fluoro Domestic Violence Service. And we've got Sharon from Domestic Violence and Homelessness. Where are you from, Sharon? Which state are you? Thanks for joining. So what we're going to cover, what can we expect? I've put there the next 3 to 9 months. I can't remember if I did that on my initial slide when I was initially prepping for this webinar, or if that's changed this week. And I'm not sure where I came up with a 3 to 9 month sort of magic figure. It's not a magic date. But I do think we need to sort of look at this as something that might be in place for a short while and hopefully not a long-term thing. It won't be a long-term thing. So what we're going to cover is specific examples of what exactly has changed with court matters, what exactly has changed with service providers, anticipated changes with service providers, and what you can do if you're a parent or you're helping parents who don't have parenting orders, don't have a parenting plan, if they're in court already currently, or if they've got final orders. We'll touch on breaching of orders and the withholding of children, which is a hot topic, particularly on social media at the moment. And we'll touch on property matters. We'll touch on what the FLP is doing, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end if I haven't answered all of your questions. So what can we expect? This is what I wrote on Saturday night. I didn't get much sleep. So when I get an idea in my mind, I'm not trying to create fear by any means, but I like to forward think and really ensure that I've got everything in place and look at what different possibilities might be to resolve certain matters. So at this point in time on the weekend, I was saying, look, I anticipate businesses will close. I anticipate there'll be some periods of social isolation. I anticipate small businesses will struggle. A lot of our clients are small businesses. We're a small business ourselves. What I was writing on the weekend, which is even more on point now, is that I anticipated that there is going to be economic instability and there is going to be a period of emotional distress for many people. And this is not just clients going through the family law system, it's potentially you and there's so many service providers on here as well, potentially you in terms of your employment or your partner's employment and so on. It's this huge ripple effect that is going to affect everybody. Jobs will be lost. I'm not overstating this. Jobs will be lost. It's not just a health crisis. And I suspect that a lot of our 2020 is going to look like this. I'm not an expert on the economy. That's not what I'm going to talk about. But what I'm leading to is that you can't disassociate family law matters from what's going on in society. So this is the situation that we've got at the moment. How's that going to affect us and affect our clients from a family law perspective? Family law matters do not stop. I don't know about you guys, but I hope this to be business as usual as much as possible. Family law matters will not stop. It's the nature of humankind. It's the nature of communication. It's what we see in Australia, and it's there may be periods of court closure. There will be periods of attending court by telephone. There may be periods of mediation services being closed, children's contact services, and I'm glad we've got you guys on. I'd be keen to hear from you a bit later when I talk about children's contact services. But from a family law perspective, we'd be crazy to think that services are not going to change and or be limited. Government services, they will change. So I just pull up my slides again. I just seem to have lost them. Here we go. I found them. That was quick for me to find them. Okay. So why the webinar? Not to create panic. It's around being forward thinking. I want to protect my clients. I want to best place my clients as well, so they're not left in a position of uncertainty. I want us as service providers to work together. And I think we need to. And at this time, more so than ever, we really do need to pull together and work together with the resources that we've got, particularly if those resources are going to start to be limited. We need to share information and we need to control what we can control. So the C word, I'm not talking a naughty language. I'm not talking coronavirus. I'm talking Christmas. Okay. The way I explained, we had a staff meeting on Monday, and what I think may happen and the way I kind of project, what might happen in this space is I anticipate that things might run a little bit like the way they do over the Christmas period at some point in time. So we've been in business for 7 years now. Every single Christmas we have been open. I've worked a number of them myself, aside from the public holidays, and a shout out to my Alicia and Elham, who are both online watching now, who worked the Christmas just gone. We were so busy, they were so busy, and there's a reason for that. Courts shut down over the Christmas period for at least 3 weeks. Service providers close. Most law firms are closed for 3 weeks. So during that Christmas period, that's a time when we have to think creatively, and we need to work with what we've got to get outcomes for clients and really work together with different service providers that are available to, like I say, to get outcomes for clients. So that's why I like to think of it as a C word, as a sort of Christmas closure. Let's hope that it's going to be a short period like Christmas is, okay? So I'll get into some specific examples now around what exactly has changed in terms of family law matters in court. So, hi Tiana, I can see Tiana's just joined us from the Family Law Pathways Network. Awesome. So about a month ago, we had a client who's party to the proceedings that was listed for a trial. Can't remember if it was a 3 or 4 day trial, but in any event, our client travelled to China to visit her family, and she was not able to get back to Australia because of the quarantine issues. This was about a month ago. She was in Wuhan. So at that time, it was all a little bit like novel at that time. We're having a little bit of a joke at the office about not joking, but it's not funny, but you have to laugh at these things, that the trial could not go ahead because our client was stuck in China. So what we had to do is we made an application to the court and requested that the judge vacate or put off the trial to a later date. So that's kind of where we got a little sniff of what might be to come, although we didn't suspect it was going to escalate to the point that it's at now. But that was our first little sniff. Yesterday, I was contacted by one of my barrister mates. He sent me a text message and he told me that he was due to commence a 3-day trial in court this week. Or was it 4 days? It doesn't matter. He was due to commence and run a trial. However, one of the parties was being tested or had tested positive for coronavirus. And in those circumstances, the trial had to be vacated. So it's having a real impact. So they're just 2 examples. In terms of what has changed, so I'm going to speak a lot of the audience I can see, and I'm just scrolling down. Yeah, so we've got about 60% of you are from South Australia, and those in WA and eastern states, keep in mind these examples I'm giving, some of them are specifically SA related, because that's where a lot of our networks are. However, you can pretty much guarantee that similar service providers interstate in every state and court, there'll be similar issues, okay? So, yeah, I'm going to speak around a notice that we received from the family law courts yesterday. So again, it was another slide update. And this was a notice to the profession, and it was signed by all the judicial officers in the Adelaide Registry of the Court. And what they said was each judge and their staff will be actively reducing upcoming court events. Each judge and their staff will be actively reducing upcoming court events. I don't know specifically what that means, but I think we can anticipate that unless matters are what the court considers urgent, and what the court considers urgent is very different sometimes to what our clients think is urgent, I anticipate non-urgent hearings will be put off. I don't know that for sure, but I anticipate that. But having said that, what they go on to say, and I'll read this, unless a matter is urgent, there should be no expectation that it will proceed to a hearing, despite the listing allocation it has been given. So there you go. What else did the court tell us yesterday? They told us that parties, clients are not required to attend court unless there's been like a specific order that they do attend. And those specific orders that a party must attend are normally in circumstances where there's been a period of non-engagement by that party, like if there's been a warrant for their arrest, or they're just not being very good litigants and the judge might get a bit peeved off and make an order that they attend in person. But unless there's been a specific order around a party attending, what we've been told is that parties are not required to attend. That's duty list, mentions, and interim hearings. And the other thing we've been told is that we as practitioners are to attend by telephone. If it is necessary that a self-represented litigant attend in person, then they're now only allowed to have one support person if necessary. So that's exactly what the memo says, one support person if necessary. The concern I have about that, particularly in terms of trial or final hearing, is that when you're at that point, it's highly distressing. And we have many clients who have professional support persons with them, professional domestic violence support persons, for example, but also a family member or friend. So to limit that to one person is extremely limiting. The other thing the memo from the Adelaide Court said yesterday in terms of the Adelaide Registry was that, and this I think is like a magic number, but no more than 8 people plus court staff in the courtroom at any time. So court staff would be your judicial officer and 1 or 2 associates. So you're kind of looking at like a 10, 11 type people in total. I don't know where that number came from, but that's what we've been told. We've also been told that when we do appear by telephone, we're to give brief written submissions and or a consent order. For those non-lawyers, a consent order is basically where you set out the orders that you're seeking. So prior to yesterday, all these interim hearings, these directions hearings and so on, we didn't do written submissions. We did not submit proposed orders. So this is all new. The lawyers listening, you need to be on top of this. Absolutely. The other thing that stood out from this memo from the Adelaide Registry yesterday was in terms of trial matters. So as us lawyers know, trials are often triple listed. So 3 matters will be listed to start trial on the same day, all at 10 o'clock. That in itself creates lots of people being present. The reason the court does that, firstly, most matters do not go to trial. And secondly, the matters that do go to trial, we tend to find there's a really good chance that they settle on the day of trial. We call it on the footsteps of the court. The reason for that is there's 2 reasons that I can think of off the top of my head. The stress involved, the thought of having to go into the court and sit there for days and be cross-examined is just awful. It's unpleasant. It's unpleasant as a lawyer, a lot of the trial process, let alone if you're a party and being cross-examined. The other reason a lot of matters settle on the footsteps of the door is because of the financial strain and having to pay a barrister and a solicitor and your daily fee. It can be incredibly expensive, and that encourages parties to settle. So one of the things this memo to lawyers said yesterday was matters will remain triple listed for trial, and the court's giving consideration as to whether part of the trial can be done by telephone. That in itself raises alarm bells for me. I suspect the judicial officers are taking more time to consider that and really work through what the practical impacts will be. But I've cross-examined in trial before, and I can tell you a lot of when you cross-examine a witness, a lot of it's around gauging their body language and seeing their body language response. It's their volume of their voice and so on. It's who they're looking at for answers. When you're cross-examining someone, to do that by telephone will be an absolute nightmare, and I suspect I hope there'll be more thought given to that, and I hope that won't happen. What might happen is things like closing submissions and so on that we give as counsel might be given by telephone. I don't know. We need to wait and see. The last thing that we know in terms of what has changed from the court perspective, and I've jotted this down on the notes there, is what's called a Section 11F meeting. And for those of you who are not lawyers, a Section 11F meeting, it's a very common order that the court makes, and the court refers the parties and sometimes the children, it's called a child inclusive conference, to meet with a family consultant at the court. And if we've got any family consultants here, can you drop us a note at the bottom? Just having a look from my notes. If we've got any of you, just drop us a note. So the parties and or children perhaps will meet with the consultant, and the consultant has access to the court documents, does a memo back to the judge around some recommendations to move the matter forward and to progress the parties with their parenting arrangements. So what we've learnt yesterday, and this was not a memo from the court, I think this was in relation to a couple of our specific clients, we were told that they'll be done by telephone. And I would anticipate moving forward the next couple of weeks at least, all Section 11F will be by telephone. Okay. And Laura just said, no, I'm not a consultant, but I have a family report starting Monday, and my family has been sick now with a persistent cough. Okay. Good luck, Laura. That's not helpful. So what has changed in terms of service providers? So we spoke about courts, now in terms of service providers themselves. Government services, and there's lots of you here, and I anticipate legal aid services will also change the way they're delivering services. We had an announcement from Legal Aid in South Australia at the start of this week requesting that all practitioners no longer fax applications and no longer post applications to their grant section, which is the section that approves legal aid funding, and that it's all done electronically or by email. I don't know who was faxing, but there you go. And the reason for that was in anticipation of their staff being able to have electronic files and potentially work remotely. I don't have an update there around if they are working remotely yet or if they're just starting to get that process in place. I anticipate there's a lot of businesses in all areas, not just family law, behind the scenes madly trying to work out how working remotely looks for them if they've never done it before. Pathways. So Michelle from Pathways SA, are you here? I know that you've registered and you touched base with me yesterday. But Michelle said to me yesterday that she's currently working from home. And there's also 4 interns from Flinders Uni working with Pathways SA. Are you guys here as well? You're meant to be. She told me that you were watching. Oh, hi, Helen. There you go. You're not in trouble. So what Michelle from Pathways SA said to me, hi, Tiana, is they are not able to meet physically together at the moment. And Michelle from Pathways herself is working from home. We've got Pathways WA here as well, I think. For those that don't know, and most of you will if you're service providers, because Pathways brings everyone together. They bring all these family law services together. Often from a court perspective, often what will happen is the registry staff and or the judicial officer will there and then refer a client to go and see Michelle or her team from Pathways to get a referral, to have a warm referral even to a parenting course or anger management course, contact service, those sorts of things. if Michelle's not there and her team's not there, I don't know what's happening. However, I suspect if there's less people at the court, it's less of an issue. But it certainly is an issue because these are the people who are at the forefront providing information. And I know when I worked at the Sydney Registry of the Family Court, their pathways was right there, right amongst it, where you're waiting in the corridors to go into court. Excellent service, excellent referrals given. If they're not there, then I've got concerns about that. We've got grandparents for grandchildren registered for this webinar, and Colleen's an excellent advocate who attends regularly at court with clients. They've announced that they've currently suspended their court advocacy service. And just while I'm talking about grandparents, I'm just going to defer a little bit. We are already having clients who are grandparents who are in the court process, have court orders to be able to spend time with their grandchildren, but they have this resistance to do so because they're at an age, or they're at a risky age. They're at the high risk category for coronavirus. And what a decision that is for them to make. You know, that's so difficult, but I'm not going to give medical advice, but I think it's understandable. What I would say to legal practitioners here and anyone representing a grandparent or any grandparents listening, because I know there's some listening as well, if you're not going to have your time with your grandchildren pursuant to orders, let your lawyer know. Have something written to the other party so there's a paper trail so that I'll call non-compliance. That sounds terrible, but just so there's a paper record of that having happened. So what else has changed in terms of service providers? Women's Information Service SA has closed its shopfront. Community legal centres, have we got guys from Northern or Southern here? If you are, just give us a hello. Let us know if you're working remotely or if anything's happening there. I heard from Susie, the duty lawyer from FAS, the Family Advocacy and Support Service in SA today, and she says they're still operating, but the way they're operating, which is a family law support service, is by phone and online. Chloe from Southern Community Justice, we're working remotely and providing telephone appointments. Thanks, Chloe. How's that working out? Are you guys going to do video conferencing as well, or are you just sort of playing it by ear for now? And also we've got Paul, Westside Lawyers are working remotely. Just playing by ear. How's that working for you, Paul, and your colleagues? Getting there. Yeah, it's a bit like that, isn't it? Alrighty, so that's what has changed. And you can see just from the conversation I've just had with a couple of community legal centres, I wasn't aware of what they were doing. So I think that's why it's pertinent that we have this conversation and we share information, and this information will change as well. But it's really helpful, I think, and I hope you find it helpful to come together to have this discussion. So what else may change? The concern I've got is around domestic violence services. I'm worried that there might be a reduction of DV services, and I'm also concerned that there might be an increase in incidents of family violence because of forced social isolation, coronavirus-based. I really do have concerns about women in that situation. What we received yesterday, again, this is South Australian, but there's going to be similar examples in all of you from different states. We had an announcement yesterday from our Chief Magistrate and around the Magistrates Court criminal matters and family violence matters. What they said, and these are the courts that deal with intervention orders, or AVOs as you call them we used to call them in the eastern states. Intervention orders protect current partners and ex-partners. The concern I have particularly is around intervention orders that are protecting current partners who are currently in this situation, who may currently be in a situation of social isolation. I'm not fear-mongering, I'm just outlining my concerns. So in SA, we've got government funding for intervention for men, and they're often referred to an abuse prevention team. And that team does assessments, referrals, and monitors compliance and so on by these men. It's only men who are allowed to be referred to this specific team. What their website says is that men's engagement and progress is monitored and reviewed regularly prior to program completion. So presumably, and my understanding is that they do a really good job, and they're really getting in there and helping men who are in current relationships as well. The announcement we got yesterday from the Chief Magistrate is that the running of the abuse prevention program has been suspended. That raises all sorts of concerns. There'll be no staff present in any family violence court. And defendants, which is the men who are referred to this program, the defendants' commencement of the program will be delayed, and the court volunteers are suspended for 4 weeks. Really concerning stuff. And I want to keep my eye on that. I know we've got someone here from Zara Foundation, and they've made an announcement around their concerns about the number of services available for women. And if you're still online, which you are, just if you feel free to have a chat there. What we do know is victim support services, there's no change, and they're going to be offering one-on-one counselling. I've put the contact details there on the slide. Yep, so I can see there's from Zara. I'm very worried about this as well. Thanks for that. Feel free, don't have any future information. Yeah, it's a real concern, isn't it? Women's Safety Service yesterday said, I think this was on their Facebook page, we're not going anywhere. I love that. That's great. So there's still services available. Let me make that really clear. If you need to know what these services are that aren't on the slide, let me know. I'm happy to provide information. But the point is that when you've got services like those intervention order programs for men in current relationships suspended, not good. Okay. So what may change? Interpreters. Someone who's registered for this webinar but couldn't attend the live, he said to me that he's very concerned about interpreters for court proceedings, and he referred to it as being a human right to have an interpreter. What I would say is that it's a right of a client to have proper process and procedural fairness to have an interpreter. Interpreters surely will not be considered one of the party's support persons who's allowed to go to court, surely not. Common sense tells us otherwise. How will an interpreter work from a practical perspective if we're keeping that 1.5 metres from everyone? We use interpreters particularly for trial. They usually sit next to the client, and they're not just interpreting what the client's saying, but they're giving them all the information around what's being said at the court. I don't know how that would work if they were to appear by telephone. So telephone interpreters can be used, for example, to help us as lawyers to read affidavits and so on. But even that's difficult if it's not in person. It's always preferable to be in person. We might need to consider moving away from in-person interpreters and using telephone interpreters more. What else may change? Family reports. So I think it was Laura said something about that before. I'll just take it back a step. For those of you who don't know, what is a family report? It's similar to what I described before about the family consultant who makes an assessment for the court, has access to the court material and so on. But a family report writer or an expert report writer takes a lot longer with the process, and there's more face-to-face meetings. I just said face-to-face, didn't I? I didn't mean to do that. And they'll talk to people like, schools and so on, counsellors, any medical professionals and so on. They'll do a report. It's usually at least 20 pages long, and there'll be recommendations at the end of that report as to living arrangements for children. That report goes back to the judge. Judge is not bound by a family report, but it's certainly helpful, and it helps us as independent children's lawyers, which I am, helps us to really think through a matter and work through a matter. There's private report writers, and there's also report writers who are employed by the court. We've not had any matters yet where appointments have been cancelled. I know I've got Alicia and Monica from my office here. If you guys could comment, have you guys had any of your matters? Have we had any notification around family reports or any other lawyers? Not as yet, Alicia. Thanks, Alicia. Not yet. Watch this space. If there's any other lawyers, if you've had any experience with family reports being cancelled or changed, can you just comment too? That would be really helpful. So yeah, again, this is something we don't know. What else may change? Children's Contact Service. What is a Children's Contact Service? These are services who supervise contact between an adult and a child, often a parent and a child. These are often matters where there might have been a long period of no contact between the parent and a child, and it's appropriate to really build up that contact in short periods of time. It's supervised. It's a very safe environment, and at the end of usually 6 observations, there'll be a report conducted by the Children's Contact Service. They're the government-run ones. We also have private services, and I know when I worked in Sydney, there was a lot more on offer than what there are in other states. So there is one in South Australia, and I can give those contact details to anyone that wants them. We've also got, there's quite a few in Sydney, and they're private companies, private businesses. One of them even drives to you, and the person will come and do the observation and will do a report at a cost. That's the issue. So with the government Children's Contact Service, and just remind me who's here from the CCS. Hi, Sue. So with the government ones, usually clients are funded by legal aid to go there, or they don't have they don't have money to pay privately. With the private ones, it's not helpful for people who are not in a financial position to be able to pay, $100 an hour for supervision. I'm just going to read what Sue has said. Oh, shit. Sorry. Okay. So CCS, and this is South Australian for those not here, has suspended changeover. So changeover is like a handover where children are, that's where the handover takes place. One parent delivers safely through one entrance at the Children's Contact Service, and then a different time, it's staggered slightly, a different entrance. It's a very safe environment for a handover location. It's particularly good where there's been intervention orders or allegations of family violence. I'm just reading what Sue has said. We're asking clients to use their alternative handover location as per orders, or we'll fast track phone mediation. We will continue to offer supervised visits, but with restrictions. Yeah, that was honest, Paul. Thank you, Sue. Sue, when you say with restrictions, would you mind, if you know yet, do you know what you mean by that? And whilst you're typing, hopefully, what I will say is I will be urging all of my clients who are not the parents spending supervised time at a contact service, I'll be urging them to really consider if handover or time at a contact service is necessary, can we think of an alternate supervisor? So it might be a family member or friend, someone independent, someone that the children feel comfortable and safe with. Now is not the time to be playing difficult. Now is not the time to be litigious and say, well, that service, whatever that service is, has been suspended, so there will be no time. Okay, so Sue says only one person in the family room, 1 hour visit, increased hygiene, will stagger visits. Okay, Sue, I suspect you've been quite busy at the moment, yeah? We sure are. Thank you for that input. That's really helpful. Do you anticipate, Sue, there'll be some sort of formal mail out or something through Pathways, for example, that will give us as practitioners updates about your services, or at this point are you contacting each particular family working on it? Okay. All right, yeah, you'll be busy. The other thing I want to say in terms of a practical perspective, so with my office alone, if we look at our current clients and also where I act for children as an independent children's lawyer, in total, we've got close to 20 matters that are either currently using, 20 families that are currently using a contact service for supervised time, or they're on the wait list. So, you know, that's a lot of people. I'm just going to start moving through a bit quicker. I'm mindful of the time, but I think it's been really helpful to pause and have those conversations in the chat box because, we're literally learning stuff as we go along. This slide is for anyone who likes to look out for apostrophes. So we'll be keeping in contact. Okay, thanks, Sue. Parenting matters, considerations you need to make. Now, I've divided this into 3 to make this really super simple. As a parent, if you're a client watching or if you're assisting a parent, you're either never been in court, don't have a parenting plan, don't have court orders, you're currently in court, or you've got final orders. Okay, and there's going to be a difference between whether or not your separation and your communication with the other party is amicable or not. We have a real mix of matters at the Family Law Project. We see the whole spectrum. So I love working with families where there's an intention to co-parent and things are amicable, but we also see matters where it's just not going to happen. And this is just being realistic. And I spoke last week, I did a webinar on my role as the independent children's lawyer last week, and I spoke about all those matters where I'm appointed as ICL, and they're matters where there's real welfare concerns, there's serious family violence, and there's just no communication between the parties. So you need to look at your particular situation or your client's particular situation and take that into account. So at this time, when we're looking at guidance from the court, this is what Chief Justice Gail Sutherland of the Western Australian Family Court said to ABC yesterday. I won't read it out, I'll let you read it. What she also said is, like all members of the public, parents with cases before the family court should pay careful attention to information and guidance provided by government and the health authorities. What's that mean? It's very difficult. So we're seeking guidance from judicial officers, and even they are not really being able to, understandably, tell us what to expect and what we should do. So going to my first scenario, and this is parents where there's no parenting plan and no court orders. If things are amicable, now is the time to communicate. Now is the time to be discussing the living arrangements for your children. You need to get this in place as soon as possible. The sort of things you need to be talking about is, well, what's going to happen if one of us as parents needs to self-isolate? What happens if us or the child or the children contract coronavirus? Can we get some mutual agreements around hygiene in respective homes? That's not something at this point that the court's going to make orders about, but in a mediation type setting, that's certainly things that can and should at this point in time be discussed, because you need to be having that clear communication. What will happen if a school closes? Is that imminent? I don't know. Things have changed very quickly. What if you want to remove your children from school regardless of whether the government closes schools? What are the arrangements going to be then? Can you offer your children more telephone calls and FaceTime with the non-residential parent? And I would urge everyone to be discussing this in any family, any separated family. Now is not the time to be opportunistic and taking advantage of this situation. If you are self-isolated, or if a child is self-isolated, if it's safe to do so, you should be encouraging these FaceTimes. You should be encouraging more telephone calls if that physical contact can't happen. So if it's amicable, if there's no parenting plan, no orders, start communicating and get something in place. If you need it written, draft a parenting plan in the first instance. That will be helpful. If you need to negotiate with lawyers, then we can do things like we can write to the other party with a proposal, setting out our concerns or your concerns. That's particularly good if you want to get some sort of quick action. You need to be looking at mediation options now. I was in contact with 2 mediation services over the weekend. One in Sydney, a barrister who's watching the replay actually, because she's probably in court. But she will conduct mediations by Zoom video, and we can get into her quickly. I also spoke to someone who runs a mediation service in South Australia, and they're very much going to have to go to video. We need these mediation services quickly. And I'm concerned about if there's anyone here from FDR services, you know that there's delays getting to your service, the government services. That's not critical of your service whatsoever. It's the reality. If there's anyone here from FDR services, are you seeing more delays? Are you doing intakes, for example, by phone now? Are you doing face-to-face mediations? My office had, I think, just 2 mediations at Legal Aid this week, lawyer-assisted mediations. They were all done in person, and there's been no announcement yet that will change. Just looking at Sue. Yep, okay, phone intakes. Yeah, so now's the time to be looking at different options. If you can't get into government services, can we use a private mediator to get a quick outcome for you? You know, we can do that by video and we can support you through that process. If you're not able to reach an agreement, so if things are not amicable, then you'll get your Section 60I quickly, which enables you to go to court. Then I'm not sure how long you'll be waiting. So again, if you can avoid court, do it. And I say that in each and every matter that we have conduct of at all times, even not during this period, we will try and avoid court. The risk of not doing anything now, a lot's happened in 4 days, and I don't know what more will change and what services will continue to be available. I do anticipate there's going to be a lot more stress, a lot more chaos in the community generally, and that sort of ongoing stress to families. So if you can work it out now, then you should. If you're just moving on, if you've currently got a matter in court, you need to turn your mind, and as a lawyer, you need to turn your mind to everything I just said around how hearings will be conducted differently. You need to let your clients know. Every lawyer should be reviewing every single file they have at the moment and looking for things like, looking for things such as handovers. So we've just heard from Sue Blackall, handover at Children's Contact Service suspended. So if that's where your handover is taking place, is there a fallback provision in the order? Is handover at school? Are you reassuring your clients that they should carry on as normal in the event of a school closure, that time should take place as per the term time orders? Every single matter is different though, so you need to really be looking out for this. Do you need to have that conversation with the other solicitor if you've got current proceedings around what will happen if one parent gets sick or there's isolation? Can we talk about make-up time? Can we get extra FaceTime and telephone calls in place and so on? In matters that are currently in court and you're seeing a real resistance from one party, and look, it's going to happen, it will. Some people are going to be opportunistic in these circumstances. It will happen. As a lawyer and as a client, you need to be aware of the option of filing an application in a case, an urgent application, to have the matter reviewed by a judicial officer. We will not be advising any of our clients to withhold children. That's just a blanket no. If there are concerns around the movement of children, and they're genuine concerns, just as Chief Justice Sutherland said on the previous slide, What can we do about it? Well, let's be proactive. Let's write to the other party. Let's bring it up now before it happens. What are we going to do in the event that that does happen? Let's offer make-up time, FaceTime, and so on. So finally, if you've got final orders in a parenting matter, everything I just said applies, okay? So any shortfall in your knowledge or confidence will apply. And I'm just looking here. We just had a comment, Lynn from Relationships Australia. We're doing phone intakes. Move along more quickly than face-to-face FDR. Thanks, Tonya. And so with your face-to-face FDRs, Tonya, is it like a 1.5 metre thing? How many people in the room? Have you got rules around that? And or are you still sort of working through it? Oh, by phone. Okay. So it's all by phone. Thank you. All right. I think legal aid's going to have to, legal aid's going to have to go that way. And I can tell you that I've already told my staff, and they're listening now. So here's your reminder. I don't want them going to FDRs face-to-face. They'll be doing it by telephone. It's not ideal, but that's just that's our obligation at the moment, okay? If you've got final orders, consider everything that I just said. Do you need a bit more mediation, perhaps, to resolve any of the outstanding issues? Avoid breaching the orders. It will happen. And what will happen when orders are breached? I had a question from America. So this shows how far-reaching this issue is, and that's why I'm giving this example. This is affecting so many people. So what she said to me is, this is in the States, she's like, schools are closed, restaurants, bars are closed. Actually, by the way, so I'm in Fremantle today. Little Creatures is closed. That was the big headline on yesterday's newspaper in Western Australia. Little Creatures closed. Tell you. Anyway, back to the question. So she says her ex-partner works in tourism, and they deal with lots of tourists from America and around the world. Am I obliged to take my children to visitation at this time? I feel like with the information coming out about isolating and staying home, that I should not send them. I don't want to get in trouble with the court system. So I couldn't give her advice because I'm Australian and I don't know her matter. Every matter's different. But this just goes to show how far-reaching it is, and having those early conversations with your ex-partner and or getting into a mediation service at this time, I think is critical. If there is a breach, I've put there for the lawyers, everyone else can ignore this in terms of the sections of the Act and a couple of case law references, which I urge the lawyers to read if you're not across contravention applications. Contravention application is when an order's been breached. So this is the sort of situation I foresee happening if parents are withholding children for what they might see as being a good reason. So when a contravention application is made, the applicant is the person who's saying, look, the other party breached the order. So the applicant has to show that the respondent failed to comply with the orders, there was no reasonable attempt to comply, and there was no reasonable excuse not to comply with orders. That's the key. No reasonable excuse. Is self-isolation reasonable excuse? Is I don't want my child moving about in these times, need to limit movement. Is that reasonable excuse? We don't know. It's not being tested. This is all new, but this is the stuff that you need to turn your mind to. Best practice is to avoid confusion in the first place, have these early conversations, get something in writing if you haven't already. My next slide got changed. It got deleted. So on the weekend, I was going to talk about travel plans and what are you going to do if you want to travel, if your ex-partner wants to travel, and so on. I think we all know what's going to happen there. Property matters. Oh, I'll just go back actually. I'm just going to, and I'm nearly wrapping up, guys. For those who, I'm mindful of the time, it's gone a little bit longer than normal because we have had so much engagement, and I'm really thankful for that. Urgent parenting matters. So I'm talking things like recovery applications. So recovery applications is where one party's retained a child or taken a child, Or another urgent matter might be where there's urgent welfare concerns, so matters particularly that go between perhaps the youth court or children's court and the family law courts. I'm hoping these urgent parenting matters will be dealt with a little bit like the C word, like a little bit like Christmas, in that even if there is a period of closure of court, we'll still have access to a judge by telephone to get urgent orders, Australian Federal Police recovery, and so on. I know Julie, one of the lawyers from the youth court, was joining us. Julie, are you here, or perhaps you're watching the replay? But if you are here, I'd be keen for your comments around the youth court and any changes that you've observed in the youth court. Just I'll move on to the next slide, Julie, but if you're there live, please let us know. Just bear with me, guys. So property matters, really important, guys, to know the basics, which is very 101 for any lawyer will know this. If there's time limitations around property matters. If you're de facto, you have 2 years from the date of separation to resolve or initiate your court proceedings. If you're married, then it's 1 year from the date of divorce order, not separation. A lot of people don't get divorced, but either way, there might be time limitation implications. Now, we received a note from the Law Society yesterday, and the Law Society yesterday said the closure of some courts and registries can be anticipated, and it might occur soon. They said this: if such closures do occur, it is likely there will be a little notice able to be given. It's also likely there'll be no certainty as to when the registries will reopen. In these circumstances, practitioners, lawyers, should urgently consider whether there are any matters with time limitations expiring in the next 3 to 4 months, where proceedings should be issued immediately to preserve those interests. So this is going to create a whole new minefield, but lawyers, you need to be aware of this. It's not practical. We filed a matter yesterday, a property matter, that the time limitation was close of business yesterday. We got it filed half an hour beforehand. We held off doing it for 2 reasons. Firstly, we were waiting legal aid funding because our client's in a position of financial hardship. Secondly, we were trying to resolve the matter without going to court. So why go to court if you don't need to? But our hands and our client's hands kind of felt forced to do that to preserve the interest. So if we're now telling clients, oh, your time limitation's coming up in 4 months' time, you're going to have to drop $5,000 in our trust account. That's not how we, at least my firm, operates. But do we need to be mindful of that? Is that a risk? This is coming from the Law Society, okay? Property matters generally. This is a time of economic instability. Property values, I'm not an expert, but they might change. Asset pools might change. We saw the share market go down, 30% or something a week ago. That's going to affect super valuations. There's going to be a lot of financial stress. Will that affect the property pool in property matters? You need to think about that. You need to talk about to your real estate agents. You need to talk to your valuers. If you've not yet separated, this is not advice I normally give, but clients do come to us before they're separated, and for good reason, to get some legal advice around how that might look. Do you delay your separation for that reason? Are you going to be able to find somewhere else for you and perhaps the children to live quickly? Are you going to be in a position of financial hardship if the property pool's devalued so much? I'm not telling anyone not to separate for that reason. I'm just giving you the information, okay? So what are we doing? FLP, we're staying calm, all right? I get a bit excitable, but I am calm. We are well equipped for this. We've been paperless for over 5 years. Our lawyers already work remote, as do our admin support. We've got clients around Australia. We will be doing video appointments. We'll continue phone appointments. We'll be helping clients with video mediations, lawyer-assisted mediations. On Monday, I got a list of barristers who are prepared to accept e-briefs. This was before we heard that we'd be doing appearances by phone, but I wanted to limit the number of brief, file delivery to chambers and I'd easily got a list of about 10 of our regular barristers who were prepared to do that. This won't be forever, okay? So what we're doing is sort of carrying on as normal, keeping in mind that it won't be forever. And there is a solution for everything, just not at little creatures. Finally, guys, just I want to say that, and I'll let you read that for yourself, but you need to be kind. This can be quite stressful for many people, not just for clients, but also you guys as lawyers and service providers. It's time to collaborate. It's time to think outside the box, and it's time to really put people first and try and get outcomes for clients and for children. If you're struggling, I've put some contacts there. Dads in distress, I think men do get forgotten a lot, and I found quite a few people don't know about this Dads in Distress service. They're excellent. So I'd urge you, if you are helping men, check them out. They do lots of men's groups, and particularly for men talking, again, I was going to say face-to-face. Look, it's all unknown, isn't it? Maybe they'll have to change their groups. I'm not sure if Pete here from DIDS is here. Are you here? He might not be. He might be watching the replay as well. Yeah, keen to see what's happening in that space. So, guys, do we have any questions? I'm just going to look in the questions section. If you've got any other questions to either myself or perhaps any of the service providers who've already commented, put it in the question section, which you can kind of see below. And I'm mindful we've just clicked over the 1 hour mark and you're all still here. That's amazing. Just shows how interesting I think this landscape is. Unfortunately, video and audio issues. Yep. So really important to help my clients. Yep. And then Danielle also missed the first 5 minutes, and Elham from our office has just replied that everyone will be sent a replay of the webinar, which is correct. Anyone else got a question while we've got the benefit of having all these different service providers here, which is really helpful? Or is everyone feeling a little bit like, oh my goodness? So I'm just looking at the stats. Heaps of people did not complete the polls, but I can see that, yeah, quite a few from the eastern states joined us towards the end, actually. Has your employment situation changed? Half of you said, yes, I'm still going into the office, but the way we're interacting and doing business has changed. Laurie, how hard is it to change lawyers mid-court proceedings? That's kind of off topic, Laurie. Call us, please, and we'll talk about it. Every matter's different, and we'll stick to the topic for everyone else that's listening. Danielle, so informative. Thank you so much. No problem. Paul, thank you. Does anyone have any questions, though? I'm just looking back at the question section. If you do, and if you kind of want to keep the question offline, which is completely understandable, my direct email is there, and our website with our contact phone numbers and everything. So hit us up. If you don't follow our Facebook page, Elham, can you put the link there to our Facebook page, or you're not quick enough to do that? I'm testing her out. Elham is going to put it in the chat section in a minute if one of the other staff members doesn't get to it first. But we do regular Facebook Live videos, and this COVID-19 topic is an ongoing discussion. It's an ongoing information coming in daily. So follow us there. Oh, there she is. So she's put our website there. And if you just go to Facebook and search the Family Law Project, you'll see it there. But that's a really good place to follow us in the first instance. And I suspect, given the number, we've had 115 people register for this webinar. It's big numbers for a webinar like this. I anticipate that I'll probably be doing this again. If you think that would be of benefit, then please let me know. If there's anything else that you want me to cover, please let me know. and you're all still there. I don't know what more you want from me. Has anyone got a question, or are you just hanging about waiting for the world to end? Parents are incredibly stressed. Absolutely. Tricia, there's not just parents, but particularly parents, grandparents, small business owners, employees. I just went to the shops this morning, and in Perth, there was a lineup outside literally around to the other shop. Never seen anything like that before here. And I live in South Fremantle, which is a little bit, it's a very kind suburb. It's a little bit hipster, a little bit hippie. Things are changing, and there's a lot of panic. And if you're a parent and you don't have protections of court orders, or you're worried about your children's health generally, yeah, of course, there's a lot of panic. But what's important at this point is to stay calm, do what you can do, inform yourself, and do what you can do. So, yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Ben, Maxine. Awesome. All right, I'm going to log off now, guys. Most of you are still there. I need another cup of tea, maybe a coffee. Sharon. Goodbye. All right. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Prue. Gee, it's so good to see so many people. It's really important to come together at this time. And I know that typically lawyers can be litigious. That can be our job. That's not the way I like to practice. But I wonder about some of those big boy firms and other law firms who typically do practice in a quite a litigious way. And I wonder how that's going to go. Maybe it's time to change. Maybe we'll see some good changes in this space. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a beautiful day, and see you next time. Maybe next week there'll be an update. See ya. Bye.